Okay, I hope you're all seeing my screen. Just a quick introduction. My name is, first of all, thank you for coming to the session. And thank you to CPESA and FIFA Africa for letting us do this session at the conference. My name is Raya. I work with the Tor project, and I have with me my colleague Gus, who's the community team lead and who will also be supporting with the facilitation. Please feel free to ask questions at any point. I don't think I'm seeing the Zoom screen very clearly, but yeah, feel free to open the mic if you're able to, and just ask any questions, and we can also do a Q&A at the end. So in this session, we want to talk about privacy and anonymity online, particularly with Tor. And so usually when we talk about this, we talk about two things, which is Tor and Tor tools, but also onion services. And I'll talk about onion services a bit more in detail later on in the session. Before we begin, just a couple of questions for everyone. If you've ever used Tor, if not, why? And if yes, if you have any questions or concerns about using Tor, and if you've ever heard of onion services or onion sites before. I'll give folks a few seconds. Feel free to write on the chat, but also if you want to open the mic, also you can feel free to open the mic and share your experience. All right, I'm assuming folks are still logging in. I'll move on to the next slide just to introduce a bit more what we're going to talk about today. Like I said, we're going to introduce Tor, specifically trying to compare it, differentiate between Tor and VPNs. What is Tor exactly? What are the different applications that run on the Tor network? Introduce onion services. How digital evidence can lead to prosecution in different parts of the world, the difference or why we don't like to say dark web when we talk about Tor, and the difference between deep web and what the so-called dark web. Maybe do a hands-on activity. Well, we'll see how much time we have at the end. Talk to you more about onion support we do at Tor in case you are interested in publishing your own anonymous website or onion service, and also talk about the latest technical developments related to onion services. All right, I see someone saying we should enable the chat so people can respond. I will leave this to the CPESA team if they can enable the chat. I don't think I have the controls from my end. Unless I do. 1 second, let me check. I don't believe so. Okay, I'll write to the CPESA team. Okay, so introduction to Tor. Then one of the ways I like to talk about Tor is to try to first explain how a regular connection to the internet works, and then compare it with other kinds of proxies. So if we imagine you connecting to any website, here I give an example from EFF.org, trying to access the EFF website via an HTTP connection. Usually the trajectory, the path goes as follows. You are requesting to access EFF.org or even CPESA.org. The path usually goes first through your Wi-Fi router, then to your internet service provider, and then your internet service provider takes that request to the website, which is usually hosted in a server, and then that responds with a web page, so you can see the website. This is a path that takes very few amount of time, like in microseconds. You don't even feel it, but every time you do a request to the internet, this is usually the path you follow. HTTP is not secure. We prefer to advocate for HTTPS. So usually in HTTPS, it's the same trajectory. The only difference is that whoever is snooping on your connection here in the middle can only see that you're visiting EFF's website or CPESA's website or any website that you want to visit. They cannot see the subpage, and if you have a form, for example, to fill, they cannot see your username or any password that you submit. So usually when we tell people make sure that the website you're visiting is using HTTPS, it's usually something you see in the header, the URL. It's a very important security feature. So usually when people think of, when people understand that, I like to ask one question, and please use the Q&A part to answer. So the question is, if you think of this trajectory, and let's imagine now you're connecting to a VPN server, where do you think the VPN falls? Does it fall in between the computer and the Wi-Fi router and the internet service provider, the internet service provider and the website server? Can you tell us where do you think the VPN falls? So when you're connecting to a VPN. And just to reiterate, you have the Q&A option. Feel free to use it to answer. Any good guesses? Maybe you know? Okay, I'll cheat and tell you. So the VPN server lies in between it's after your internet service provider. So when you're connecting to any website, if you're using a VPN, you're first telling your internet service provider you want to connect to the VPN server, and then it's the VPN server that takes you to the website. And so if we ask this question again, if someone is snooping on our traffic, is snooping on our network, and is trying to understand what we're doing, the only thing they can see, if they're snooping here, they can only see that we're trying to log in to a VPN server. And that's if they know that this is a VPN server. And then the VPN server in that case would know where we're going. And usually they would also know who we are and what we're doing. So there's a lot of trust that we place on the VPN provider in terms of our activity online and what we're doing online. VPN servers have a main feature, which is to help us circumvent internet censorship, and so it's a cool feature. But in terms of protecting us from online surveillance, at least traffic surveillance, it's not necessarily. It's how much we trust these VPN providers. And what is the difference between VPN and Tor in that case? It's this. So what happens here is that your connection to any website, to anything on the internet, instead of bouncing to one server and then to a website and back, it's bouncing through 3 different servers, or what we like to call our Tor relays or Tor nodes. And so when it's bouncing through these 3 servers and back, your communication is encrypted not once, not twice, but 3 times. And so first, when it's exiting your computer, let's imagine it's exiting, and it's reaching the first server decrypts the first layer, and then you have the second server that decrypts the second layer, the third one, the third layer, and then the third one is able to decrypt the final layer and know which website you want to go to, but they don't know who you are. So what's good about that is it becomes a decentralized network, and it means that nobody knows where you're going, and at the same time who you are and where you're going. So it protects your privacy in that sense. So this is basically what the Tor network is. We say Tor network when we're referring to these groups of servers that are actually run by volunteers from all around the world. And we have, I think we're counting more than 9,000 servers or relays nowadays. So that's the difference between VPN and Tor. So just to compare the 2 images, if you go this and this, you can see 2 main differences. So one is that you have more than one node. Your connection is jumping through multiple nodes, and 2 is that your connection is encrypted multiple times, which further improves your privacy and protects your anonymity. And this is why we say that Tor is actually privacy by design rather by trust. Okay, so another cool image I like to use is trying to see who can see our activity when we're connected to HTTPS, but we're not connected to Tor. See, here it's the same trajectory that we were talking about before. So it's 1 second. So it's that trajectory. It's you connecting to any website, and in the middle, you have your Wi-Fi router, your internet service provider, and then the internet service provider of the website you're visiting, and then the website itself. So if you're not connected to Tor, you can see Tor here is grayed out, but you're connected to HTTPS. You can see that here, everyone in the middle is able to see a lot of information. Depends on whom. There's a hacker snooping on your Wi-Fi network. They can see which site you're visiting and where you're coming from. The internet service provider has a good bunch of data that they can see about you. They can see which website you're visiting, your location, and they can also receive from legal warrants or not necessarily legal, but they can receive orders from police asking them to receive that data about what you're doing online and your online behavior. Any three-letter agency, intelligence agency is also able to see a lot of information about what you're doing online, and so on. The sites themselves are able to see much of what you're doing on their website. Now, if we compare that to when you're connecting to Tor, and here you can see again, we're adding the 3 relays we talked about previously. When you're connecting to Tor and you're seeing the same people who are trying to snoop on your network, you can see here in the first half of the trajectory, people, whoever is snooping, they just know that there is someone connecting to Tor, and they might know that it's you that's connecting to Tor, but they don't know what you're doing while you're connecting to Tor to connect to the website. Whereas in the second half here, after you exit the Tor network, whoever is snooping, they know someone is connecting to Tor to this website, but they don't know who this person is. So at this point, you need this hacker to talk to this agency in order, or let's say there's this agency to talk to this agency to be able to deduce who's doing what on the Tor network. But this kind of correlation is not so common, and it's a minimal risk. So this is why we say that Tor protects privacy and potentially anonymity online. And it protects against this kind of traffic eavesdropping. What's good as well, if we take the example of the internet service provider that's snooping on the, or that's receiving legal warrants from the police and from lawyers, they can only see that that you are using Tor, but they can't see what you're doing on Tor. All right. So there are different ways of defining Tor that we like to use. It's definitely free software. It was created at the Naval Research Laboratory around 2001, 2002. It's also an open network of over 9,500 nodes. Anyone can join these nodes. So you yourself, if you live in somewhere, and if you have the capacity to run a Tor node, we have resources online. Everything we do is open, so you can just check them out and run your own Tor relay. Tor is also a browser because there are apps that we deploy using the Tor network. One of the more common ones, the more supported ones, is the Tor Browser, which connects you to the Tor network. I'll talk about it in the next slide. It's also a US nonprofit. It was formed in 2006 to continue supporting the development of the Tor network. And it's also a community of volunteers, researchers, developers, and really a lot of people from around the world who enjoy using Tor and use it for different purposes. The way you can view Tor, it's fighting some of the internet's original sins. Since it's routing this traffic through multiple nodes and encrypting it multiple times, and since it's encrypting it multiple times, it's like the layers of an onion, and that's why we call it onion routing. This provides anonymity, which mitigates against traffic surveillance, the surveillance I was talking about previously, but also helps avoid censorship, which is something that we're seeing. It's one of the main use cases of Tor. All right. Also, there's different ways of defining anonymity depending on who you're talking to. So if you're talking to governments, you can say, oh, it's traffic analysis resistance. If you're talking to private citizens, you can say it's privacy. Anonymity is about privacy. If you talk to businesses, you can tell them anonymity is about network security. But if you talk to activists, it's also about reachability. It's like I said, one of the main use cases. Anonymity means you're anonymous to internet censors, means you can reach websites. Another important feature about anonymity is metadata security, is that usually when people talk about end-to-end encryption, they talk about content encryption and not the encryption of the metadata. And what people seem to forget is that many people in three-lettered agencies have not warned, but they've basically talked openly about the fact that they use metadata to kill people. And there's another set of slides later on. I can show you how different agencies and police and state actors have used metadata to prosecute people. And so the Tor network would protect against that, since it provides this metadata security. All right, two sides of the same coin. Censorship and surveillance, they go hand in hand. That's something that you should keep in mind. So in order to block access to any website, someone needs to know and be able to spot when you're using that website. So they need to increase, in a way, their surveillance capabilities. And so anonymity grants protection from both of these, surveillance and censorship. I talked about Tor Browser. Tor Browser is an open source browser. It's basically Firefox, a fork of Firefox with many privacy improvements. And everything you're doing on Tor Browser is encrypted. It's bouncing through the Tor network. It provides anonymity. When you're using the browser, nobody knows who you are and nobody knows where you're going. It's available in many languages. There's a priority we give to localization, and our manual and our documentation is also available in multiple languages. I believe the browser is available in 36 or 37 languages. All right. There's also mobile versions of the browser. You can download it for Android under Tor Browser. On iOS, it's very important for me to note that it's called Onion Browser and it's not called Tor Browser. It's not called Tor Browser because it's not developed by the Tor project. It's developed by the Guardian project, which are partners of the Tor project, and you can find more information here, onionbrowser.com. Make sure to never download fake apps. Make sure to avoid that at all costs, because if you're trying to protect against or increase your security and privacy online, fake apps definitely will go against that goal. Okay, and like I said, Tor network, growing network of relays. Here's a nice graph that shows from 2011 up until today how many relays we have. They really form the backbone of the network, so they're important. It's important to note that the Tor project, and without them, without these volunteers who are running these relays, we don't have Tor. It's important to note that. All right. So it so happens, and you might be aware of that, is that it's possible to block access to the Tor network. These relays, since they're servers, they all have IP addresses, and we try to have as much transparency in everything that has to do with relays, so they're publicly listed, publicly available. So any government who's very keen on blocking the Tor network can simply block access to these 7,000 relays. So what the Tor project did is try to encourage people to deploy private relays, and by private relays we call them bridges because they form a bridge to the Tor network. Private relays means their IP is not publicly listed. It means that it's much harder for internet service providers and governments to find them and therefore block them. All right, bypassing, like I said, the censorship of the Tor network is using bridges. You can, from Tor Browser, from any Tor app you're using, usually in the settings, you can find bridges and you can connect to them, and it should help. There are many ways to connect to bridges, and if you're interested to talk more about that, I'm very happy to answer all your questions. Torproject.org, the main website of the Tor project. To download the browser, to know more about the project, can also be censored, obviously. Everything is susceptible to censorship, so we have trusted mirror sites. You can also request the browser bundle via an email, via Telegram, and hopefully soon via other channels. Just email gettor, and you say you want your browser in Windows and in English or in Farsi, and you can receive it. Okay, So Tor Browser is one of the applications, one of many applications that run on the Tor network, but there are many other ones. One of them is Tails, which is an operating system like Windows and Mac. The only thing is that it's amnesic, so it forgets everything, and incognito, which means that it obfuscates everything you're doing, like it hides everything you're doing on the computer. Everything the moment you're connecting to the internet via Tails, it's going through the Tor network, and the operating system runs straight out of a USB. It's very easy to deploy, and it comes with a set of secure applications like KeePass for password management and so on. It's used a lot by journalists and specifically whistleblowers to leak information to media outlets. There's also a system-wide VPN. So if you don't want to use just the Tor browser, but you want all of your apps to go through the Tor network, so you can bypass censorship, but also mitigate against traffic surveillance, you can download Orbot. It's available for mobile so far. It's iOS and Android under the name Orbot. And it's a great way to also bypass censorship. It's becoming a popular app as well in places with high censorship, including, I think recently we've been working a lot in Turkmenistan and as well as Iran, and we're seeing an increased usage of Orbot. Secure whistleblowing. I talked about whistleblowing using Tails, but there's also media outlets set up secure whistleblowing, let's say like a Dropbox. There's Secure Drop and Global Leaks. Both make use of the Tor network for whistleblowing, and it's becoming increasingly popular. You can check Secure Drop, I believe, has a list of all of the media outlets that use Secure Drop, and you'll be shocked to find that it covers a good bunch of media outlets from across the world. And there's peer-to-peer messaging. So it's basically, let's say, any chat app like WhatsApp Signal, but using the Tor network. And I believe it's only available for desktop now. It's called Ricochet Refresh, and you can also make use of it. All right, so onion services. So I talked about the Tor network, and I want to jump to onion services. But before that, if anyone has any questions, please use the Q&A to ask them. Feel free to ask anything that comes to mind. Also, if there's anything that's not clear, please let me know. I'm happy to explain again. Okay, so I'll leave it open, the Q&A. Feel free to ask at any point, and I can see the questions that you're asking, but I'll talk about onion services to start with. So onion services. Onion services are websites that are only accessible via Tor, and they're usually a domain that ends in .onion. This is how you recognize them. It's usually a long string of characters, and then it ends in .onion. Usually what happens is when I say it's a website that's only available via Tor, it means you have to have the Tor browser open, and then you can access the Tor network. If you try, here I have just Firefox, I don't have Tor browser. If I try to access any onion service, it won't work. It will tell me it can't recognize this address. Whereas on Tor browser, it will open the website. And what actually happens is that there's a rendezvous point within these relays that we talked about, where the website meets the user. And it's by default, since it's meeting in that network, it's using end-to-end encryption. Everyone is using Tor, even without HTTPS, which is quite great. If we take the example of Intercept, you might know the Intercept. It's a popular media outlet. If I'm connecting to the Intercept just on Tor browser and not its onion service, just intercept.com, you can see here I'm going through my browser and then connecting to 3 different relays, in this case Canada, UK, then Canada again, and then going to the Intercept website. Whereas if I'm visiting the Intercept's onion service, so it's the same website, but it's a .onion version, you can see that there's a difference here. It's a growing number of relays because I'm meeting the website within the Tor network. I'm jumping more than once, and so is the website. It's jumping within the Tor network to meet me and display the website. But you can ask yourself, and it's fair, what are the features of such a service? Like, what does it what's the difference between visiting the Intercept's website on Tor Browser, visiting the Intercept's website just anywhere, and visiting it on just as an onion service. And I'll talk, and I hope to be able to convince you how it further protects anonymity and privacy, and also protects against censorship. All right. A .onion address, like I said, it's a long string of characters, usually 56 random characters, followed by .onion. What's important to note, it's automatically generated. It's actually a public key, if you're familiar with public keys, and you don't need to purchase a domain. So it's actually decentralizing from these entities that sell domains for you. So it's pretty cool. It's censorship resistant, so as long as someone has access to the Tor network, they can always visit that site. It's not, nobody can take the onion address and then block it, which is very, very cool. And it's important to know that, because sometimes some of the relays have to comply with local legal requirements and need to block access to certain websites. So if you're visiting an onion service instead of visiting the regular website, you will bypass this legal requirement. So we like to say that it's the most censorship resistant technology available out there, as long as the Tor network is reachable for the user. It also provides metadata obfuscation and elimination. So everything you're doing, there's no metadata that's being bounced here and there, which is very good because it protects digital but also physical security. It provides maximum harm reduction. It diminishes a lot of the risks we find around online surveillance and online censorship. And there's also one point to note, that even if websites are under attack, sometimes we often find that the onion services can still give access to the content of the site. And this is the case, obviously, if the onion service itself is not under attack. And like I said, it contributes to this decentralized web. We like decentralization, and we don't need a static or dedicated IP. You don't need to purchase any domain. There's no approval process. It's an automatically generated address that you can use to deploy your site. And we've made it easier to find these addresses because we do recognize that no average human being can memorize 56 string of random characters. And so if you enter any website on the Tor browser, you can find a purple indication that says onion available, which means that actually there is an onion service counterpart available for this website. So like the New York Times, if you go newyorktimes.com, you'll see onion available. And if you click it, it will take you to the New York Times onion address. Fun fact that sometimes I hope is shared more widely is that the onion service of the New York Times does not have a paywall. So you can actually access and read articles for free. And if you ask me why they don't have a paywall for their onion service, because the paywall will defeat the privacy. It will require you to identify this. Okay. Popular onion services, there are many that have been published. I actually had to add for this presentation a couple. In terms of media outlets, I believe these are mostly Western media outlets, but the Intercept, BBC, ProPublica, New York Times, and The Guardian all have onion addresses. So you can try it for yourself. If you have Tor browser, enter theguardian.com, and you can see the purple pill appear, which says that there's an onion service available. For social media, browsers, and other services, you have RiseUp. Facebook has an onion service since 2014, Twitter since 2022. Brave browser have their own onion service, but also Proton. So if you want like a completely anonymous way of running an email, just use Proton or RiseUp, but their onion services, not just their regular websites. And also you have human rights organizations and technical and open source organizations that have onion services, including Secure Drop, Frontline Defenders, Privacy Matters, and so on. Okay, and like I said, I don't need to share the link with you. If you know these organizations' main domain, enter it on the Tor browser, and you will see this purple pill appear, which indicates that there's an onion service. All right, benefits of onion services, just to reiterate, to make sure It's clear, it's censorship resistance, it's end-to-end encryption between the user and the site, it's contributing to the decentralized web, it's a network sustainability because the more you add onion services, the more you increase bandwidth for other activity on Tor. It's protection for sources, for whistleblowers, for journalists. It's an opportunity as well to educate people about privacy by design, and it's also eliminating and obfuscating metadata. So the difference, okay, what's the difference between visiting a regular website over Tor Browser, and visiting the onion service? So I'll leave this table open just so you can read it through. I will admit that I did this with my colleague, and we're pretty biased because we're very pro onion services, and we had to rate onion services as very good for everything. But in terms of censorship resistance, just to compare, so on a regular website, websites can easily be censored. If you're visiting them via Tor, the relay that's taking you to the website can also censor your access to the website. For an onion service, no, nobody can censor that site. As long as Tor is reachable, you can access the site. In terms of privacy safeguards, really, it's just HTTPS that's giving you any privacy safeguard, but there's minimal safeguards related to tracking, and it's really depending on where you're hosting the website and so on. In terms of visiting the same website over Tor, it's still possible to correlate data on the Tor network. Whereas with onion services, it's end-to-end encryption. Nobody can correlate the data. You're communicating with the website completely privately. In terms of metadata elimination, for regular websites, honestly, everything is being recorded about what you're visiting, on which websites you're visiting, it's completely a privacy violation. Whereas if you're visiting a website over Tor, it's already better because it can only be logged by the website, like what you're doing on the website, and specifically if you're logging into the website. Whereas with an onion service, it's eliminated on both ends. Nobody can log metadata. The website can log data about you if you're logging in, but if you're using an anonymous username, then it's better and better. Okay, so why onion services matter? Honestly, there are many use cases for it. One of the main ones that we're seeing recently is that there are lots of people that are being prosecuted and put in jail because of online activity. And it's even online, it's just metadata that's being shared here and there and being leaked here and there. And it's being used to prosecute dissidents, activists, get even people seeking abortion. And ensuring that people access your service or your site by an onion service, it just increases both their digital and physical safety. Okay, so I see a question from Magambo saying, I didn't get the part of verifying sites under onion services. I'll admit that I also don't understand fully the question, but what do you mean by verifying the site? I cannot remember when I said that. So let me know and I'll try my best to answer it. Okay, so I'll just move very quickly and present 4 cases of people that were prosecuted and detained and jailed because of digital evidence. There's the case of anti-Trump activists. So lots of people wanted to organize against the inauguration of Trump, and they used a website called Disrupt J20. And at that time, the Department of Justice in the United States served a warrant to the people hosting that website. They're called DreamHost, and they asked for the IP addresses of all the visitors, so around 1.3 million visitors, which subpages they visited and how often they did so, and like if any text was entered in the website and in any form. And another case, okay. Another case is a French climate activist who used Proton Mail to communicate with peers. Proton Mail received a warrant from Swiss and French authorities, and honestly, any online service is likely to receive a warrant, and so had to start logging the IP address of the activist in question. And so by doing that and by submitting it to the French and Swiss authorities, they were able to identify who's the activist in question, and they ended up arresting the activist, and I believe the activists ended up in jail. And also the group that worked on climate faced a lot of legal consequences. What's good is that Proton actually offers an onion service, which would really mitigate against such a case. So if you go proton.me/Tor, there's lots of information around using the onion service of Proton and how to maintain an anonymous email activity. Okay, Saudi dissidents. This is a very recent case. There are dissidents in Saudi Arabia. If you don't know, Twitter is extremely popular in Saudi Arabia. That they used, there's lots of anonymous dissidents on Twitter, and they use Twitter to speak against the state and the government. What happened is that there were what happened is that there were employees inside Twitter that received bribes from the government to start logging the IP addresses and provide much more information around these dissidents. And so as a result, the dissidents faced a lot of bad consequences. And what I would say is that actually using the onion service of Twitter would mitigate against that. But that doesn't include just clicking on the Twitter onion service and logging in normally. You would need to have also an anonymous email address and an anonymous username, and making sure that every time you're logging to your email address on your Twitter, you're only doing that via the onion service. And people seeking abortion, this was a recent case and also US related, is that a state in the US, the state of Nebraska, submitted a search warrant to Facebook asking all the messaging chats, because you know Facebook does not encrypt your chats. So all of the chats between a mother and a daughter, and the daughter was planning an abortion. The police used these chats for a second warrant, and so they used all of this information to charge both the mother and the daughter. What's good to know is that Facebook does provide an onion service, so you can create an account, and it's an anonymous account. Make sure you don't use your legal name, that's what I mean, and communicate with people via Facebook in a more private fashion. I see Magambo's question, so I'm going to go to it. So knowing that the site has an onion service, okay. So Magambo, thank you very much for your question. It's a very important one. So this is what I mean by knowing if a site has an onion service. So there's first thing, you would need to have Tor Browser downloaded. So you download it, and then once you're connected to it, go to any site. So for example, NewYorkTimes.com, Guardian, even Twitter, and so on. Once it loads, you will notice that the URL, and this is a feature of Tor Browser, the URL bar will have a purple icon here that says there's an onion available. And this is how you know there's an onion service for it. Now, I have to admit, not every website that has an onion service parallel will have this feature enabled, but many of the popular ones already do. So the ones that I stated here, except for Facebook, if you go to them, you will find their onion service. But you can also, for many of them, just Google Twitter onion service and find the link and then copy and paste it to Tor Browser. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please feel free to let me know. Okay, and I see a question from Blerid saying in Africa, most internet connections are mobile, slow, unstable, and metered. Can you comment on how Tor can be ported to mobile and work with high latency? Thank you for your question. Actually, we've been working a lot in East Africa with human rights organizations in East Africa, doing trainings on Tor, and we receive this question a lot. And we're very aware of it. Now, Tor is mobile. You can download it. I'll just go to this slide. You can download Tor apps on mobile, not just Tor Browser and Onion Browser, but there's also a VPN called Orbot that you can make use of. In terms of the metered connection, as far as I know, and I hope my colleague Gus will correct me if I'm wrong, the Tor Browser should bypass the metered connection in terms of specifically, like if it's metered, you can only use Facebook for so many, like this amount of megabytes or gigabytes, it should bypass that. In terms of the slowness of the connection, you can contact our front desk or even contact me or Gus, and we can help to see how we can make sure that Tor remains at least equivalently fast to your connection, or at least somewhat, so you can browse anonymously and also without censorship. And my colleague Gus is raising his hand, so I'll give the mic to him.
Yeah, hello. So for Africa, there are different contexts. Like one, it's a huge continent, but in some countries where they have some social media tax and enforce you to pay to use the internet, like to use Facebook or to use Twitter, you need to pay more. If you use Tor Browser, in some countries, it's possible to not pay that tax. So I did that test some years ago in Uganda. You didn't need to pay the social media tax. You could connect to Tor using a Tor bridge, and that would be possible to connect to the Tor network without paying that social media tax. So there is really small things that maybe it's possible, maybe it's not possible for other countries, but I saw that happening in East Africa, specifically in Uganda. So I think in some context, like when you have like human rights defenders, activists that really need to have access to the internet, maybe is a good way to connect them to the internet without paying.
Thank you, Gus. Perfect. Brahid, let us know if it's still unclear. We're happy to elaborate as much as possible. Okay. So I'll go to this part, which is a part I enjoyed talking about. So you often hear Tor being referred to as the dark web or the deep web, and they're often conflated terms. And so I hope that the next few slides will once and for all clarify the difference and what is meant by it. All right, so what's actually meant by the deep web? The deep web is an actual term. It's something that like computer science decided to coin, and it refers to websites that are not indexed by search engines. So if you go on Bing, Google, DuckDuckGo, any search engine that you like to use, there are websites that are obviously not indexed by these search engines, and so they're placed in the deep web. Usually these websites include like maybe your email mailbox. This is something that is definitely not indexed by a search engine and so on. So this is what is actually the deep web. So think unindexed websites equals deep web. But what about the dark web? One thing to note, and I'll note it from the get-go, is that the dark web, it's an illusion. It's often used to speak negatively about encryption, and encryption is extremely important for privacy and online. And it's usually spoke about in the context of encouraging backdoors. So usually you'll find governments like the UK government recently trying to say, oh, encryption is bad. We need to have backdoors. We need to have access to people's data. And so it's often used to refer to encryption in a bad way. So we don't like the use of the term dark web. And it is an illusion because really, what is it? When we talk about dark web, what is it? Usually, if you Google deep dark web, you find pictures of icebergs. And honestly, you'll still find them on YouTube. You'll find them everywhere. And it's crazy. What you need to know is that this analogy is false. Usually, and actually, icebergs are not placed like that. 90% of its body is not is usually below water, and its orientation is unstable. You won't find it in nature flowing like this. So again, false analogy, and it really doesn't serve any purpose other than spreading misinformation and misconceptions about the web and encryption. Okay, but what is the dark web? So again, deep web equals unindexed websites, but what is the dark web? Usually this is how it's represented. It's represented onion services equals online criminal activity where we can hire hitmen and buy drugs, and also unindexed websites. These are all dark web. this is false. Usually it's more like this. It's like a intersection of things. So it could be that there is online criminal activity that happens to also live in websites that are not indexed by search engines, that also happen to somewhat, there's an intersection that some onion services may be like that. But it's very, very important to look at scale, because when we talk about these, it's important to know that onion services represent like such a small portion of the internet. Online criminal activity can exist anywhere on the internet. You can see it very openly on social media. You can see groups on Facebook that promote horrid things like human trafficking. And you can also see it on unindexed websites. So really, when we talk about the dark web, are we talking about onion services? Are we talking about the criminal activity, about this intersection? But it's not clear. So I hope this demystifies it for you. Hopefully that answered the question, what is the dark web? And the answer is, it's an illusion. Okay. It's also important to see some of the metrics. So this is just slightly technical to say we have around I will admit this graph is old. So we might have now around 900K onion services. So almost 1 million. And they represent about 1.2% only of tourist traffic. So therefore dispelling the fact that everything that is Tor network is anonymous. Everything in the Tor network is an onion service. It's not. It's only represents about 1.2% of that band of that traffic, and hopefully it dispels everything we've said previously. All right. By the way, just to make it clear, as we try to be as transparent as possible, we have an open metrics portal that you can check and see many things, including information about all the relays, but also how many users we have in different countries. It's an approximation. It's very difficult to gauge that number, how many onion services there are, and also across time. Hopefully that will provide some insight into Tor. All right. I have a couple of activities written here. So one, deploying an onion service using an app called Onion Share, and also file sharing. But I'll move to the file sharing, and I'll just go through the slides, and I won't ask you to download an app, and we won't I won't bother you that much. We won't do a walkthrough, but I'll just explain the step by step. So this is an alternative to file sharing using applications like Dropbox or WeTransfer. And here, if we imagine that your threats are anything that you're worried about, surveillance of your files that are being shared, you're worried that someday someone will serve a warrant to Dropbox or WeTransfer to ask about all the data you've been sharing via their service. There are many other threats that you can think about. You can think about an alternative, which is Onion Share. So Onion Share, it's an open source tool. It allows you to share files anonymously and securely. But also other things. It actually allows website hosting and also doing anonymous chatting. But we'll focus on one feature, which is the file sharing. Everything you're doing via Onion Share, it happens through the Tor network, and it's actually happening through an Onion service, which further protects your privacy and anonymity online. Another good use case, before I forget, is if you're a journalist, if you're an activist receiving information from sources, using Onion Share to communicate with your sources is a very easy and a good alternative. So it's very when I say easy, it's really a few steps. You download Onion Share. It's available on all of the main operating systems, and you click share files. You drop the file actually on the application. Once you drop it, you click start sharing. And when you start sharing, it will give you an option. It will generate a link for you. And you can also say here, if you want to enable a password. And so this link, if you notice here, I hope the screen is not too small for you. You'll notice it ends in .onion. It's an Onion service. So whoever you're sharing a link with has to have Tor Browser downloaded. And so they can, copy and paste this Onion link on the URL bar of Tor Browser, enter the password that you shared, and then download the file. And on your Onion Share window, you will see that someone has downloaded the file. You can also specify that this file will only be shared and downloaded once. I've done it once. I actually use it on a daily basis to share my files because I'd rather do it via Onion Share rather than any other service. There's also, as far as I know, no limitation on size, so you can download as small or big of files as you need, and also no limitation on format of files. Okay, any questions so far? I see a question from Mangambo, actually, a statement saying that having the Tor metrics on the internet openly, what does it compromise the location of the relays? So very good question. And so it compromises the location, and therefore they become susceptible to censorship. But this is important for us. Running relays is an act of transparency. We don't want random relay operators to just jump in on the Tor network and decide to transfer people's traffic here and there. So it's an act of transparency as much as possible. So all of the relay information is available on our metrics portal. But we know that this means that the Tor network becomes susceptible to censorship because anyone can just pick up the IPs and block them. And so this is why some of the relay operators have decided to also run bridges, which is actually private relays. The main difference is that the IP address is not publicly listed. And so, and if I just go back here, just to show you how many we have in terms of bridges versus relays. 1 second, I think it's this slide here. So if you see this slide here, you can see we have around 7,000 relays and 2,600 bridges. So if your country is censoring the Tor network, you can connect via bridges instead of just regular relays. And you can see this number is growing too. Okay. I see another question from Birgit. Can Onion Share work on mobile? I believe there is a beta version for Onion Share on mobile. It's still being tested, but I've downloaded it. I have an Android, so I know it's available for Android. I don't know for iOS, but maybe Gus would know. It's good to note that since everything Tor is open source, anyone can develop apps around Tor. And so Onion Share is actually developed and maintained by Mike Kelly, who's a very prominent security researcher and developer. Go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, so we have now Onion Share for iOS too, but it's under development. So if you are interested on testing, like not for real production, like for real, but if you want to test and see how it works, get in touch with us, and we can share with you how we can install and test. I think that will be very interesting to see how Onion Share works in different contexts, like how it works in Latin America, how it works in East Africa, how it works in China. So we are looking for just kind of feedback, like how it will work for you, and then we can see, oh, maybe we need to change a few things, or the size of the program is too big, So there is just small things that we can improve and we can change. It's very important for us to get just feedback from the community.
Thank you, Gus. On that point, I will be sharing contact information at the end, so you can get in touch with us at any point. Just go back to that slide. Okay, so also some form of support that's like not just app specific. We also provide support if you want to launch your own Onion service. Just let us know. We can provide that support. We can do trainings for your teams around Onion service. We can do high-level support, how to deploy an Onion service. We can also run advocacy campaigns together, something I personally very much enjoy doing. So very, very, very important to note. It's not something, everything Tor, it's not something to replace any other security practices, whether you're doing it at the organization level or at an individual level. to integrate within other things you're doing to protect your online privacy, security, anonymity. So that's very important to note. It's one of many tools in the toolbox, and it's and one of them is Tor. Sorry. So I hope that's something that comes that's clear to everyone, and I hope it's clear to organizations, but also individuals. EFF recently released a guide for nonprofits if you're working on an organization level for better practices to improve your online privacy and security, and you can check it out. But also there are a ton of other guides if you're also working on an individual level on how to do it. All right, other things related to the support we provide. We have a lot of open source tools around onion services. You can deploy your own landing page to promote your link to people. It's called the Onion Launchpad. You can also monitor how many, like approximately how many people are visiting your Onion services, but also specifically with this tool, Onion Probe, you can see if the website is down or up. It's also an open source tool that you can deploy, and some other useful links that you can use to learn more about Onion services. We have a forum that's very active that you can join, and anyone from the community, but also from staff members can reply. There's the manual that's translated in many languages, the support portal, which is more like an FAQ, like a frequently asked questions. And you can also visit our community portal, and there's a lot of information about Onion services and also how to deploy them. And yes, I see a few more questions. If the user is on mobile, can the cell provider still reveal the location? Is there a way to connect that to their traffic on the Tor network? So also I'll leave Gus to elaborate more, but a very important thing to note about phones and how they're designed is that they're not exactly the perfect tool to completely be anonymous. So there are many reasons for that, so if you want to be completely anonymous and really avoid as much as possible, like 99% of any form of leak about your location and what you're doing online, doing it on mobile is not going to be your solution here. Rather, using a desktop is better. So desktop, computer, laptop, and that would be a better solution. But I'll leave Gus to elaborate more on that point. Oh, and one thing to note, and this is something I should definitely add on the presentation, is that the fact that doing things on mobile does not necessarily protect anonymity to the fullest. It's definitely increasing privacy. It's definitely helping you avoid censorship as well. But in terms of fully protecting anonymity, it's not the best tool. Okay.
Right. Sorry, I
yeah,
didn't understand your question.
So it's basically whether on mobile the cell provider can still reveal the location if people are using Tor on mobile. Can they connect the traffic to the person?
So your internet mobile company, they will see that you are using Tor, unless if you use a Tor bridge or a pluggable transport, like Snowflake and other stuff like this. But they won't know, your internet provider company, they won't know what you are doing on the Tor network. So your anonymity is guaranteed here. Like they won't know that you visit a website or if you downloaded a book on the internet. They won't know that information. So I think it's just important for human rights defenders and other folks, journalists that are sharing files or communicating with other people or visiting websites, or which website you have visited. So this information is very important for journalists and human rights defenders. I know some cases where people using Google to search to do their investigation, and that information was recorded on their browsers and also recorded everywhere. So the police and the investigation was like, okay, I know that you are investigating this case of corruption in my country. So I know who you are and what you are doing. So in countries that we have a lot of corruptions and a lot of other criminal cases that people should investigate and expose, it's difficult for journalists to do this in anonymous way without using Tor Browser. It is possible to have anonymity using other techniques, but with Tor Browser, it's very easy. You just need to install this app, and that's it. You are way more secure than doing by yourself or trying to be anonymous online using other stuff. But that said, that doesn't mean that just installing Tor Browser is enough. As Raya was saying here during the presentation, there are many other things that you need to do to be safe online. Like if you log into a website and you are using Tor, you are reviewing yourself to that website. So there is just always small stuff that you should be aware. But if you want to have a Tor training, like how to install Tor browser, how I can teach other folks about Tor browser and Tor apps, get in touch with us, and we are going to be very happy to help you and run this training with you and your organization.
Thank you, Gus. And I see also another question. Um, aha. Even on desktop, the connection is often via SIM card, at least in our region. Yes, thank you, Pirid. And also Gohari is saying, is it a good idea to use Tor under another commercial VPN? So using Tor plus VPN. And this is a question we've been getting a lot recently. And the short answer is no, it's not a recommended action. The long answer is it is possible if you're technically able to configure the browser to use a specific proxy. But I don't know, Gus, do you want to add anything to that point as well?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay.
How much? Sorry, Ray. How much time do we have?
I think we passed an hour, so we have half an hour more, I believe.
Okay, okay. I was afraid that was we are almost on the time. Yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So yes, so basically, it's not recommended to use to activate the VPN and then use Tor, or the opposite, unless you're able to just technically configure that on Tor. But I do, Gohari, I'm very curious to know why this use case would matter to you, so we can try to find a solution together. And I heard there's a question from Vivid. It sounds like we need to strive for wider adoption for multiple uses. If merely using Tor or having the app is considered incriminating, the encryption won't protect them. That's a very interesting point to raise, and a lot of people ask this in trainings, and this is the case with many applications. And so I know a lot of researchers that are working on this and advocating for the ability to cloak apps. So like on your phone, what you can do is change how the app looks like and the name. And so this is something that perhaps Tor could do, but there are other things that people do. I know people, for example, that are afraid of just keeping another app on their phone, like a secure messaging app that's not related to Tor, because when crossing a border, when crossing an airport, and what they do is they uninstall and then reinstall once they land. And this is one of the mitigating strategies. But I personally think that the ability to just hide, like change icons of apps and their names is a better way. It's less hassle on people. But very good point. Again, Tor doesn't protect against everything. It protects against some things, and I hope it's clear what it protects against and what it doesn't protect against. But one of the things is just sometimes having an app like Tor and other apps on your phone can maybe raise suspicion, but often people I have to admit, some people and some state actors don't know what Tor is. Okay, I hope, Brahid, I answered your question. If not, please let us know. Gohari wrote, sometimes bridges are not available to use directly when installed offline, and some VPNs offer a no-log policy, so I wanted to ask if at least for the initial connection, will it be a good idea? So in terms of if the bridges don't work, we have many types of bridges that we can test together to see if they work. And I believe it so happens, so we can work together to explore which bridges would work in your context and in your country, and see like do some troubleshooting together. But yes, there are VPNs that offer a no-log policy that have strong security auditing. And so it's just a matter of learning how to configure that properly on the browser so you can make it work safely. Go ahead, Gus.
Yeah, one thing that we did recently, like now we have connection assist. So if you are connecting using Tor Browser and you are in a country that is blocking Tor, Tor Browser will try to connect you to a bridge automatically. So there are different ways. Well, not just a bridge, it also is going to try pluggable transport. And there's a small difference here. A bridge is a server that's not published on Tor. And a pluggable transport is something that we do on that your traffic, your internet traffic that doesn't look like Tor, or doesn't look like you are connecting to the Tor network or bypassing censorship. But it's a way that we can obfuscate that you are connecting to the Tor network. Some bridges, it has pluggable transport, but no all them. So what we did in the past few months, well, more than few months, this bug was open for many years, but we fixed it in July this year. And I hope that you can give a try and see if it works for you. But let's say that you are in a country that's blocking Tor. Let's say that you are in Russia or in China or maybe in Egypt or in another country that's blocking Tor. Tor is going to connect to the Tor network. And when it fails, it automatically is going to try some bridges. And if that fails, then they are going to say, hey, can you tell me from which country connects to Tor network? And what we did community, we reach out to some members of our community and we ask them, okay, what kind of pluggable transport works for you? So folks from Russia told us like, oh, Snowflake works great for us. So what we said like, okay, if Tor Browser doesn't connect, we are going to send a domain fronting request to the Tor project. So we are going to ask for what's the best options for our Russian user to connect to the Tor network. And then we made a list of these options. Like the first option is try to connect to Snowflake. If Snowflake doesn't work, try to connect to OBS for Bridge. If OBS for Bridge doesn't work, try to connect to Bcasual. So we are building this assistant to make it very easy for people to bypass censorship. At the moment, it's only available on Tor Browser for desktop. It's not available for Orbot or for Tor Browser for Android. So this is something that we want to improve. Second, it's very important feedback from the community. Like if you are in a country that's blocking Tor or Tor is not connecting automatically, then you need to ping us and say, hey, Gus, or hey, Raya, this is not working. I'm trying to connect to Tor and something is not working. So we can take a look and we can ask you to run some tests for us. Like I know that we have here in FIFA Africa people from Uni. Maybe you could run a Uni test and share with us the results. So we can say, okay, now I have the result, what I need, and I can test and change the configuration for you. So just kind of just small feedback is very important for us, so we can try to improve how Tor is connected to the Tor network. But let us know, please test the Tor browser please test Tor browser for desktop. It's not yet ready for Tor browser for Android, but if it's possible, please do and tell us if it works.
Thank you, Gus. Yes, and I don't know if you still see my screen, but I opened our recent blog announcement that about this feature, which is how it looks like in this GIF file. So you're trying to connect, it's not working. It will tell you, do you want to try a bridge? And it will keep trying until it finds a bridge that works for your context. Okay. Any other questions? And before I forget, I'm sharing. I'm gonna share. Sorry, both Gus and I's emails on the chat, so you can have them and ping us for whatever it is. So if you have any question about Tor or Onion services, if you want to arrange training, so we can run trainings or run trainings of trainers, and also if Tor is not working in your context and you want us to troubleshoot with you, and if you have any questions about any other apps that use Tor, including Onion Share, including Onion Browser, including Tails, and so on. And so you can just email us and send us any question you may have. All right, I'll just do very quickly some updates. I'll skip these slides, and so leave the last 15 minutes or so for more questions if there are. And if you want us to contact you as well, please feel free to just okay, I don't want people to share their emails openly, but if you feel comfortable doing so, please share your email on the Q&A, and we can also email you. Also, another good reference to have is our front desk email. So you can also contact our front desk team here. And if specifically if it's related to troubleshooting, anything that has to do with Tor. And we also have a Telegram channel that's, we have 4 Telegram channels, 3 that are bots and 1 that is actually human. So I'll just try to find the link quickly and share it with you. So if you are on Telegram and prefer to contact us via Telegram, you can do so on this link. This is our Telegram channel. And we have a Signal number now that you can contact us via Signal if you prefer. And let me just pick out the Signal number. Okay. Here is our Signal number. And I hope this was useful. I hope okay, I'm seeing a new question from Vivid. Are you doing any political advocacy or diplomacy to promote Tor with parliaments to avoid bans and blocks so bridges aren't needed? This is a very good question. I think we try our best because, you know, sometimes it can feel too much of PR trying to tell people, hey, we're good people, don't block us. But we try our best to do campaigns around dispelling basically what, like the bad things people say about encrypted services, but it's a tough fight to fight. Magambo asks, is it secure to use the SOX proxy to route all my internet traffic through Tor without using the Tor browser? And for that, actually, I'll relay that question to Gus, who might have much more experience than I do regarding SOX proxies.
Yeah, so it really depends on what you want to achieve. Let's say that you want to bypass censorship. Let's say that your country is blocking not just Tor, but is blocking a bunch of traffic, internet traffic. So you can use that to bypass censorship, and not just for one web, but for all your operating system. It's not ideal to do that because some apps are not configured to use Tor, and maybe they are leaking information from you. Like some apps are using HTTP and not HTTPS, or maybe they are not changing the Tor circuit to get you a new identity. So it's very complicated, So if you want to achieve not anti-censorship, but you want to achieve anonymity plus anti-censorship, then I would recommend using Tails, which is an operating system that you can plug in on your computer and use everything in a very secure way, and it's going to route everything over Tor in a secure way, in using Tor best practice. So I think it really depends what you want to achieve. If you want to, oh, I just need to bypass censorship because everything's blocked here in my country, then it makes sense. But if you are thinking about, oh, I'm just passing everything through Tor because I want to be online and I want to be anonymous online, maybe then you should look on Tails because this is the right way to do. And then using SOX proxy is not the best way to do that. So yeah, it really depends on what you want to achieve, but I would really, really recommend if you're looking for privacy and then anonymity, I would recommend Tails.
Thank you, Gus. Okay. Any other questions? There are times I wish Zoom had a feature to play music in these times. Okay. Thank you very much, Magambo. Really appreciate the kind words. Okay. One thing to note, we try to be as transparent as possible with everything we do at Tor, so you can find most of the information, hopefully, that you need on our website, so torproject.org. All the code, all the work we do is open source, which means you can view it, but you can also suggest changes. And if you're a developer or you are connected to a community of open source developers, you can ask them to start contributing. We also have open channels, group channels where people can join our conversations as team members, but also as community members. A lot of the meetings we do as between staff members are open. There's a channel on Matrix called Tor Meeting that you can join and also contribute to. We also really appreciate the efforts of contributors to Tor and people who are very active. And so feel free to join us, join our conversations. And you can become a core contributor to the Tor project. All right, I leave it at that. I hope if anyone has any questions, our emails are here, and so are the emails and numbers for the front desk and the Tor support. If there's anything you'd like I said, if you want us to organize a training of trainers, if you want to talk more about advocacy campaigns, about onion services, just let us know. And if you have any questions about just using Tor and using Tor tools, you can also just ping us at any time. Ping any of these channels. All right, I'll stop sharing. And thank you very much for everyone who attended this session. Personally, I was really hoping to make it physically to Zambia for FIFA Africa, but it didn't work, and hopefully the Tor project team can make it next year. Thank you very much, Cipesa, and for FIFA Africa for this opportunity.
Thank you, Cipesa. Yeah, we are looking for maybe next year we can meet with you in person. One thing that we are going to do next year too, we have some travels to do in East Africa, in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. I need to check exactly when we are going to do that, but if you are interested or if you live in these countries, maybe we can meet, in real person, not by Zoom calls. So yeah, let's see what happens next year. I will let you know. If you get in touch with me, I will tell where we are thinking to go next year, so we can schedule some activities together.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And thank you, Britt, for the kind words. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll